Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for today's AUKUS Defense Ministers Joint Press Briefing. It is my pleasure to introduce U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin III, Australia Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense Richard Marles, and the United Kingdom Secretary of State for Defense Grant Shapps. Each of the ministers will deliver opening remarks, and then we'll have time to take a few questions. Please note that I will moderate those questions and call on journalists. With that, Secretary Austin, the floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by thanking Deputy Prime Minister Marles and Secretary Shapps for coming to California for our second AUKUS Defense Ministerial meeting. And it was definitely worth the trip. We had a very productive and wide-ranging session, and today just underscore that AUKUS is a once-in-a-generation opportunity that will promote peace and security throughout the Indo-Pacific. The department remains deeply focused on the Indo-Pacific, and AUKUS underscores that fact. For more than 2 years, our defense forces, industries, and scientific communities have led this historic endeavor. In March, our three democracies boldly launched the optimal pathway for Australia to acquire conventionally armed, nuclear-powered submarines. And today we highlighted the important progress that we've made to see that plan through. I'm very proud of the sailors from our three countries who are seamlessly training together across our trilateral partnership. This year, 6 officers from the Royal Australian Navy graduated from U.S. Nuclear Power School, and more are on track to graduate in early 2024. Now, these proud officers and sailors will be the first to operate Australia's conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines. As part of the optimal pathway, we're also working to increase the frequency of U.S. SSN port visits to Australia. This directly supports President Biden's commitment to ensure that Australia acquires this new submarine capability at the earliest possible date while meeting the highest standard of nuclear non-proliferation. The ministers and I also reviewed our major accomplishments within the crucial second pillar of AUKUS. And through Pillar 2, we have leveraged our respective defense innovation and industry sectors to develop and deliver advanced capabilities so that our warfighters can hear, see, and act with decisive advantage. We're innovating with cutting-edge tech in several areas, including artificial intelligence, electronic warfare, and quantum technologies. And by implementing strong standards of technology protection, we are reducing barriers to sharing information and technology. And we're streamlining our processes to deliver these capabilities and lead our partnership forward for the next generation. Today, we endorse several new efforts under Pillar 2 of AUKUS. Let me highlight 2 of these efforts. The first is a maritime autonomous experimentation and exercise series. Beginning next year, our three countries will conduct a series of integrated trilateral experiments and exercises. And they will enhance capability development, improve our interoperability, and rapidly accelerate the sophistication and scale of autonomous maritime systems that we can deploy and operate together. The second is an AUKUS Innovation Challenge Series. That will mean that companies from across our three countries can compete for a common innovation challenge prize that will help our warfighters improve interoperability, gain decision advantage, and strengthen our deterrence. Now, these challenges will begin in early 2024 with a prize challenge focusing on electronic warfare. Again and again, AUKUS proves that we are stronger together. And every day we move closer to our shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific. So Deputy Prime Minister Marles and Secretary Shapps, I'm truly grateful for your leadership and your friendship and for everything that you're doing for our shared security. And I look forward to strengthening our partnership even further and to building a more secure future together. Richard?
Well, thank you, Lloyd. Thank you for hosting us here today, and it is great to see you, and it is great to see you, Grant, here in California. And we have had a very productive day in this trilateral AUKUS Defence Ministers meeting. And as we reflect today on what has happened in the last 12 months since we met as a group in Washington, D.C. in December of last year, it has been a truly momentous year where there has been an enormous amount of progress, particularly in respect of Australia acquiring a nuclear-powered submarine capability with the help of the United States and the United Kingdom under Pillar 1 of AUKUS. In March of this year, we saw the announcement of the pathway by which this would be achieved, which was a breakthrough moment in terms of Australia's defence capability. And since then, we've seen the standing up of the Australian Submarine Agency. We have seen the commencement of infrastructure work. We have seen Australians undertake training, both submariners and defence industry workers, here in the United States, as Lloyd mentioned, at the Nuclear Power School, but also in the United Kingdom. We have seen, importantly, the legislative work proceed to enable this to happen in both of our countries. We've seen the frequency, as we promised back in March, of visits of the United States nuclear-powered submarines happen to Australia. Indeed, in the last 12 months, we've seen the USS Mississippi, the USS Asheville, and the USS North Carolina visit our country. And we look forward in the future to seeing more of those visits, including visits of Astute-class submarines from the United Kingdom. But as we reflect on that year past, we are also making very important announcements today about the future in respect of Pillar 1. Next year, we'll see the most significant maintenance occur in Australia of a United States nuclear-powered submarine, which we plan to happen in the third quarter of next year, which will crystallise the development that needs to be occurring in terms of both infrastructure and skills within our workforce and our submariner base. So we are really pleased about the progress in respect of all of that, and it is an enormous amount of work which has occurred over the course of the last 12 months. But significantly in terms of today's meeting, it is actually Pillar 2 which has taken centre stage. And indeed, I think today's meeting will be regarded as a critical moment in the history of Pillar 2 of AUKUS, and that is the sharing and development of advanced technologies between our three countries. We're putting in place the architecture which will enable that to happen through the International Joint Requirement Oversight Council, which will give a joint capacity to look at the technologies with which we are pursuing. Our armaments directors will be working together with a tabletop exercise next year, and as Lloyd mentioned, our innovation organisations, the Defence Innovation Unit of both the United States and the United Kingdom, along with the Australian Strategic Capabilities Accelerator, working together on joint challenges, which we'll see initially that happen in the space of electronic warfare. And again, the legislative environment which is being worked on in our countries is creating a seamless defence industrial base between the United States, Australia and the United Kingdom, which is so essential to seeing AUKUS Pillar 2 become operational. But in terms of that architecture, today we are backing it up with practical first steps where specific technologies are being worked on. And we are announcing a significant number of those today, which include work on quantum clock, which includes the deep space advanced radar capability in our three countries, and includes resilient artificial intelligence, which in turn will give rise to resilient precision targeting. All of these are practical steps forward which come on the back of an architecture which has been established today in relation to Pillar 2. And I think when we look back at the significance of today's meeting, we will see this as the critical meeting which was a watershed in the progress of Pillar 2 of AUKUS. Across all of our work, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, across the friendships that exist between the three of us personally, what is really clear is that AUKUS represents a powerful combination of countries working together, which is sending a really important message to the world. I think all of us have remarked on the fact that together, when we are meeting, when we are discussing these technologies, when we are taking these steps down the path, each of our countries is much stronger.
Great. Thank you very much, Lloyd, Richard. It's 80 years since the US Navy shot down an enemy dive bomber off Cape Hunter on the south coast of Guadalcanal. Nothing particularly unusual. It was the Second World War going on at the time. But what was remarkable about that particular Navy destroy was that the fighter, the actual missile that hit it without a direct hit. It missed, in effect. So this was actually a piece of fatal artillery that had destroyed that particular item, but the shell itself was revolutionary because the 15-centimeter fuse was capable of detonating when it was close to the target. So in a sense it missed, but it also hit. The tiny proximity fuse not only helped win that particular battle, but it also helped turn the tide of the war. And this miniature miracle was only possible because of a different type of fusion, and that was, you guessed it, between Australia, the UK, and the United States. It was actually developed by a brilliant Australian scientist called William Buteman, who was in London developing it, and the fuse was then transferred to the United States, where it turned into this tremendous game changer. Today, in a much more dangerous world, with Russia waging war in Ukraine, with Hamas wreaking havoc in the Middle East, China undermining the freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific, we've never had a greater need for more innovation, to be more pioneering. Which is why, over the past 2 years, AUKUS has been fusing together our transnational brain power. And here at the Defense Innovation Unit, we've discussed the results, a raft of game-changing new AUKUS projects. Together, our nations will be launching and recovering undersea vehicles from torpedo tubes on current submarines. We'll be enabling us to deliver more sophisticated strike intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. We'll be using quantum technologies, just mentioned, to support global positioning, enhancing the ability of our undersea capabilities, including on our future SSN AUKUS submarines, so they can stay silent and undetected. And sharing in not only all of this, not only with multiple undersea systems, but with our P-8A maritime patrol aircraft, strengthening our capacity to zero in on potential dangers. I think the inventor of that artillery shell, Dr. Buteman, would have been proud of what we've been talking about today. The man they dubbed at the time Mr. Searchlight Radar would have certainly appreciated another landmark agreement that we are signing today, because in the coming years our nations will be creating a global radar network, bringing together 3 ground-based stations, one in each of our countries. Radars more sensitive, more accurate, more powerful and agile than anything that has gone before, giving us the ability to see beyond the clouds and to detect, identify and track in space up to 22,000 miles away. Operational by 2029, that's this new initiative alongside AUKUS will not just help us to protect our communications and our navigation satellites from deadly threats of tomorrow, but will boost all 3 of our economies. Back in 1943, our brightest minds proved that geography was in fact no barrier to our innovation, as long as our values and our ingenuity was in close proximity. And 80 years on, inspired by the creators of that miraculous invention, our alliance is once again fusing our intelligence together, sparking new capabilities from sea to space and igniting the ideas that will change the course of our history. So Lloyd, Richard, that's why I've enjoyed our conversation so much this afternoon. We said we were going to ensure that Pillar 2 was meaningful, that it would change the way that we work together, and today we've set that course. I'm delighted to be working with you both. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Our first question will go to Associated Press, Alita Baldor.
Hi, thank you. Lolita Baldor with the Associated Press. To the two ministers, you've both talked a bit about the various types of technology that you agreed on today, the radars, the deep space improvements, and we also heard about the sonobuoys. Can you tell us what specifically your countries are looking at in terms of what you think one of the top priorities is for improving your military capabilities through this? What would be something that you were really hoping to key in on? What aspect of it? And Mr. Secretary, for you, if you want to answer that question also, but a separate question for you. Today, as you know, the truce in Israel ended. Israel, do you believe Israel has been taking the American warnings about civilian casualties seriously? Or are you concerned that even hours after the truce ended, there were about 175 deaths already in Gaza?
Do you want
I'll
to
start,
Yeah,
Lita, if you want me to lead with that question on Israel. Just want to remind all of us how this started. October 7th, Hamas launched a very brutal attack into Israel, took the lives of over 1,200 Israelis, took over 200 hostages, which included small children and Holocaust survivors. And so we have said a number of times that we will continue to support Israel's right to defend itself. Now, I'll let Israel speak for their own operations. What I will tell you, Lita, is that I talk to Minister Gallant on a near daily basis, as you know, and each time I talk to him, I remind him of the necessity to make sure that they are protecting innocent civilians and creating pathways and corridors for civilians to move out of the battle space, and they need to make sure that they're doing things to ensure civilian safety. So that conversation is ongoing on a near daily basis. We're going to continue to work with Israel and Egypt and Qatar on efforts to re-implement the pause. And I think during the pauses, we've gotten some very meaningful things done in terms of a number of hostages out of Gaza. Plus, we've been able to introduce a meaningful amount of humanitarian assistance. More needs to be done for sure, but it's encouraging to see that we've been able to ramp up the amount that we've moved into Gaza. One of the conditions for the pauses to continue, an Israeli condition, was that Hamas be able to provide at least 10 hostages for release each day. And they've, at this point, failed to produce names or hostages for, upcoming days. And I would also remind you that we've seen things like a brutal terrorist attack recently on the part of Hamas in Jerusalem. So Hamas has violated the very conditions that they agreed to. So again, This remains dynamic. We'll continue to do everything we can to emphasize to the Israelis the necessity to operate within a law of war, but also protect civilians in the battle space.
Well, perhaps in answer to the first part of the question, Australia is an island nation which is geographically relatively distant from other parts of the world, and so our needs lie in maritime capabilities, but longer range capabilities, capabilities which enable us to project. And so having strike capabilities are really important, and when you look at something like resilient precision targeting, which forms part of the announcements today, that is critically important. When you look at the maritime autonomy measures that are contained in the announcements today, that's hugely beneficial for a country like Australia. I think the third area which is covered by the specific technologies which have been described in the announcements is decision advantage. Decision advantage in terms of the time it takes to make a decision in the battle space, but also the fidelity of information that is there for the decision maker. That's obviously critically important to any defence force as it is to ours. So when we look at the technologies that we are working on as three countries, they are highly relevant to the specific needs of the Australian Defence Force.
And to the same question about which element of it, of course we've had nuclear subs running for nearly 6 decades under the sea in the United Kingdom, nuclear armed as well. So here are two things which are exciting. Well, there's a huge number to go after. Artificial intelligence and autonomy, cyber, electronic warfare, hypersonic, counter-hypersonic capabilities, quantum technology, undersea warfare, to name but a few. There are 11 in total. The simple answer to your question is it's hard to know which of those will end up being the most relevant, partly because you can't see the future, but partly, and I was reflecting on our meeting, given that Kissinger has just passed away, he once remarked no country can act wisely simultaneously in every part of the globe at every moment in time. And I was saying in our meeting, that's why 3 wise heads put together are surely better than one. I'm excited about all of these developments, but I can't tell you which one in the long run I should be most excited about today. That is the purpose of working together.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Channel 9 News, Australia, Jonathan Kearsley.
Thank you very much, Brigadier General. Jonathan Kearsley from Channel 9, Australia. Secretaries, Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, thanks very much for your time today. I wanted to go to initially China's recent aggression in the Pacific. We've seen sonar attacks on Australian Navy divers. We've seen the Chinese Coast Guard vessels ramming into Philippine Navy vessels. Are these the types of issues, firstly, that need to be raised directly, leader to leader level? Has it increased your need for urgency in formulating the AUKUS agreements, particularly around some of these aspects, and increasing the urgency in bringing that partnership together a lot faster? And finally, if I may, AUKUS is an agreement that is designed to last. You described it as generational. Donald Trump is running for President of the United States. He's a man notorious for walking America away from key international agreements and has expressed his desire on a number of aspects around that. How concerned are you that AUKUS could be sunk if there's a change in American leadership?
I'm confident that President Biden is going to win the next election, and I will remain confident of that. I would tell you that what we're working on here is, as you pointed out, a generational capability. We have common goals and objectives. Foremost among those goals and objectives is to ensure that we maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific. Our values are similar, and we have long-standing working relationships with each other. I continue to see bipartisan support in both chambers of Congress for AUKUS. And it's that support that I think will, for us, success going forward. So, again, I'm very confident that we'll be able to work together on this very, very important issue. Again, I think all three of our countries see the value in the long-term capability that this is going to create for us.
To go to your the first part of your question, the incident that occurred on the 14th of November with HMAS was on the part of the PLA Navy unsafe and unprofessional, and that is a matter that we raised directly with China. I think we have made public, including our concerns about behaviour. It's important that we made this public, and those representations have been made very clearly to China. In terms of what does that say about the environment that we're operating in, and the importance of moving at a pace in terms of our work, the answer is it absolutely highlights the need for this arrangement, and it absolutely highlights the need for speed in this arrangement, and I think you can see that speed. When you look at where we were 12 months ago compared to where we are today, it is a huge leap forward in terms of the work that we've done on Australia acquiring a nuclear-powered submarine capability, which for our country represents the biggest leap forward in military capability in more than a century. The fact that we've now been able to identify that pathway, that, as I said earlier, we've stood up the relevant agencies, we're seeing infrastructure work be commenced, our workforce being trained, the visits happening, this is moving fast. But what does happen, well, firstly though, in terms of acquiring that capability, it will change the character of Australia in terms of what we are capable of doing, and that does not happen overnight. There is no showroom where you can go and buy a Virginia-class submarine. We are acquiring the capability to operate and build nuclear-powered submarines in Australia. It will be the biggest industrial endeavour that we have ever undertaken as a nation, and it is not going to happen overnight. But I'll tell you what does happen overnight. The fact of our three countries standing here right now, meeting in the way that we are, making the plans that we are making, and walking down this path together represents an enormous deterrent effect immediately. It sends a very, very powerful message to the world, and a very important message to the world. And as to the final part of your question, we are completely confident about the American system, as I might say we are about the British system, and indeed our own, for this reason, that across the three countries there is bipartisan support for this arrangement. That's actually what gives it power. By virtue of that bipartisan support across our three nations, we can confidently say that when the three of us are not standing here at some point in the future and there are three other individuals, they will be pursuing the same objectives. And in respect of the US specifically, I've had the opportunity of being on Capitol Hill in the last few weeks to talk to lawmakers around the legislation which is currently progressing through the US Congress. And as Lloyd has said, across the political spectrum there is both a commitment to the alliance between Australia and the United States and support for it. There is commitment to AUKUS and the relationship between our three countries, and I think there is strong support for the specifics which is in that legislative package. But that ought to give everyone in Australia an enormous sense of confidence that this is an arrangement and a set of relationships which genuinely does enjoy support across the political spectrum in the US, as I know it does in Britain, and as it certainly does in Australia.
I've been on Capitol Hill, unrelated, in a separate visit last month. Very, very support for AUKUS. So I have every confidence in, as Richard says, in AUKUS being for the very long term. On your actual point, navigation of the open seas under international law is something the United Kingdom takes incredibly seriously. We regularly and consistently are in the Indo-Pacific and will continue to be so. We already have announced plans to send our carrier strike group, led by the Queen Elizabeth class, again following a visit previously. Be a very important in the context of AUKUS, actually, just to be absolutely clear, that those international rules are there for a reason. The UK London to the International Maritime Organisation takes this particular right of free passage very, very seriously. AUKUS is a fantastic way to make that clear to everybody.
Just on that specific aspect of that, do these incidents that occur in the South China Sea and in the Indo-Pacific more broadly, do these need to be raised directly?
Yeah, and actually there are always diplomatic processes to do that, because same in the air in other circumstances with Russia, for example. So these issues are always raised. There's a professional way to behave and act in the air, in the sea, and when countries breach those professional. I mean, it's a matter of professional pride for most navies, for one thing, and we absolutely call them out on it. But no one should be under the impression that any of us are prepared to be kind of bullied out of waters which are clearly international waters for all to sail under international law.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Our final question will go to NBC News, Robert Handa. All right.
Happy to take the final question if it's been thrown open.
Please, sir.
Can I ask you, Minister Marles, you say that this is moving fast. Is it right that you've indicated today that an East Coast base for the nuclear subs will not be selected until the end of the decade? Do we really need 6 years to make that decision? And are you kicking the can down the road on something that's politically different?
Well, we've made that position clear before today, that the timing in which to determine an East Coast base is at the end of this decade. And we made that clear at the time that we articulated the pathway by which Australia would acquire a nuclear-powered submarine capability. I mean, it will be an important decision, but in the sequence of decisions that needs to be made, that's when it comes up. There will be other decisions that need to be made, such as where we will locate the place that we will ultimately dispose the nuclear reactors. That's clearly going to be a difficult decision, but in turn that's a decision which comes later again. This is a matter of laying out the pathway and following it. Right here and right now, we are evolving an industrial capability to build nuclear-powered submarines out of the Osborne Naval Shipyard in Adelaide. We are evolving an operational capacity to operate and maintain nuclear-powered submarines out of HMAS Stirling in Rockingham, south of Perth. The first step was about having an increased number of nuclear-powered submarine visits to HMAS Stirling, which is happening as we speak. And as I articulated, the next step in that will occur next year as a result of the meeting that we've had today. So each of these is about working through the steps of the pathway that we articulated last March. And the determination of the location for an East Coast base is going to be a big decision, but it's a decision which is to be made in the late 2020s. And we're going to work through each of the decisions as they come.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our press briefing for today. Thank you again for joining us.